Thanks for tuning in. Today I got a little something different. I've got some history about John F. Kennedy and how he became an American hero before he was president. I was always very interested in the assassination of Kennedy. It really fascinated me. All the holes in the official narrative really kind of gripped me ever since I was young. And then when Oliver Stone came out with JFK back in the 90s, I must have watched that movie 100 times. It was an awesome movie. And it really highlighted the attorney that he prosecuted, Clay Renshaw, in New Orleans as being tied to the Kennedy assassination. With that said, John F. Kennedy was assassinated on November 22nd, 1963, and ever since his assassination, there's been controversy surrounding the assassination itself. A lot of people saw different shooters, like on the grassy knoll, and the Zapruder film showed the actual assassination. However, when Time Life acquired the video, there were frames missing in the video. There's all kinds of crazy stuff. When the Warren Commission came out, they had a lot of spooky science involved with the Warren Commission report. I mean, such as the magic bullet theory, which literally they said stopped in midair, turned around, and went through the senator's body that sat in the front seat. And it was just crazy. And they made something up out of thin air, and it really was no science behind it. Another thing, Lee Harvey Oswald was never arrested in the beginning for the assassination. He was arrested for shooting Officer Tippit. He ran to his home from the school depository. Then, as he left his home, Officer Tippit confronted him because he fit a description. And when he confronted him, he shot Officer Tippit dead in the street, and then he fled to the movie theater. That whole scenario, once he was arrested, he finally was then associated with the killing of Kennedy. But today it's a little different story. It's about John F. Kennedy, the soldier. Tells you kind of a little bit of why he was such a badass and what made him such a hero after World War II. Kennedy was a PT boat officer, and if you know anything about PT boats, they're small boats, and they're hunter-killer boats. So let me get on to the video. And with that said, I want to thank you once again for tuning in. And if you could just like and subscribe, I really appreciate it. It would help the channel out immensely. So here we go with the video.
John Fitzgerald Kennedy is a man who doesn't have to serve in World War II, and yet he does. He's a man who earns the Purple Heart during the Second World War and carries that Purple Heart into the White House and serves as a president of the United States. At the outset of the Second World War, John F. Kennedy joins the United States Navy. JFK's naval service began in naval intelligence. He gets himself transferred and eventually into the PT boats, into a place where you're going to get shot at and you might die.
Yeah, let's talk about that. PT boats were tiny. I mean, they were about the size of a large trailer, maybe a little bit bigger, but they were absolutely essential on the modern battlefield of World War II. But let's continue with the video.
In World War II, the PT boats were small, very fast boats, and they would go after very large vessels and try to hit them with these torpedoes.
To put this into perspective, as far as the size disparity between these boats, you're looking at a Japanese destroyer, which is 300 feet long, versus little patrol torpedo boats, which had 12 people on it and were only 80 feet long.
In August of 1943, U.S. military forces were still fighting the Japanese in the Solomon Islands. Kennedy's torpedo boat squadron had moved into positions at night.
It's 2:30 in the morning, and PT-109 gets rammed by a Japanese destroyer.
Now let's just talk about that. When they're talking about a group of PT boats, you could equate them to like a bunch of coyotes, literally out there hunting whatever they could find, and they hunt in packs. And due to their size, they were super fast. And if you saw the PT boat in the beginning of the video, it was way down in the water because these things were loaded with ordnance to the gills. They had a belt-fed machine gun on the top, 2 torpedoes on the top, and more torpedoes down low. The torpedoes were literally launched off the side of the PT boat while they were running, and then they would track and hopefully hit their target. But it was a cramped, not really fun place to be. You're totally getting shot at the whole time, and you're completely relying on your speed to get it from point to point and to attack the enemy vessels in your area.
Overboard, everybody goes, and they're about 3 miles away from the shore.
The destroyer basically slices it in half. 2 of the crewmen are killed outright, and the rest are basically floundering in the water. With almost no hesitation, Jack Kennedy takes control of this awful, chaotic, terrible tragedy.
One of the crew members was so badly burned that he couldn't swim, so Kennedy had to take a strap from a life preserver, put it like a bit in his mouth, and then swim with this guy trailing behind.
Wow.
After they reach that island, there's recognition for the fact that they.
Now, when I was younger, I was a lifeguard, and in order to be a lifeguard in my day, pre-90s, you had to swim a mile, and that was in a pool setting. And in this particular case, he not only had to swim 3 miles, he had to do it towing a guy behind him, and that is a feat of strength that I wouldn't even want to attempt. So yeah, hats off. That is a boss move if I ever saw one.
Can't stay there because there's no food, no fresh water on that island, and also Japanese patrol ships are out by day and they have to hide from them. He eventually reaches one island where he writes a message on a coconut, then he gives it to a native who then passes it on to the Navy. The Navy ultimately, after 6 days, comes in and rescues them all.
Just like that, out of nowhere, very quickly and violently, commences the episode that would launch Jack Kennedy into superstardom. And
now, in this video, they make it sound like those natives were friendly, but those natives on those islands did not see very many people come wash up onto their shore very often, and I'm sure they were not as friendly as they made it out to be in this video. But yes, the whole coconut story, that is absolute facts. He did write on that with a stone, and he did actually give it to a native who got it to the Navy at some point. Within 6 days, he was rescued.
eventually all the way to the White House.
JFK eventually rode those Pacific waves to the Oval Office.
Okay, everybody, this video was awesome. It does highlight exactly the kind of bravery and big balls that put JFK into the White House. Earlier in his life, his brother died, and his father actually wanted his brother to run for president. But when Kennedy had this particular incident happen, it really put him in the limelight and made him a hero for all Americans. Kennedy's legacy goes way beyond just what a standard president would have done. Kennedy really wanted the space race, and he went after it, and he made promises that he would ultimately never see fulfilled. But he said by the end of the decade that they were going to have a man on the moon, and that's exactly what the United States did, beating out the Russians. And Russians beat the United States to space, but we kept pushing and pushing for the moon, and that's where we landed. Kennedy also was a big in civil rights and the civil rights movement, and authored and penned many laws and some of the things that led to the modern civil rights movement, Kennedy was also a big advocate for not going to war. He wanted to get us out of Vietnam, and he wanted to disband the CIA permanently. Kennedy thought that the CIA was not good for America, and he wanted to disband the CIA immediately. He actually had an executive order penned that essentially was going to dismember the entire CIA and cast them to the wind. Kennedy thought that the CIA was a bad look for America, that they were doing things illegal, and that they should not have been mandated to stay together after World War II. So with all of that wrapped into this video, I am Tank, and this is Tank and Company TV. If you did like this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing. It really helps our channel. And I hope you enjoyed this inside look at what really made Kennedy a man during World War II and made him stand out amongst all his peers in the Navy. You guys have a good afternoon, and thank you for watching Tank and Company TV.